KNON 89.3 FM in Dallas and Fort Worth, the voice of the people.
Business owners, tell KNON's listeners about your business. You can put your business or event on KNON. KNON currently has space available to run announcements for you. Tell KNON's listeners about your goods, services, nightclub, concert, or event. Help keep the voice of the people on the air while putting your information on the air. KNON's been named the #1 radio station in Dallas by both the Dallas Observer and D Magazine. Put your business with Dallas's #1 station. Call now for more information at 214-828-9500, extension 227, or extension 233. For more information, go to KNON.org and click on the Run Spots on KNON page. It's a great way for your business to support community radio while letting more people know about you.
Good morning and welcome to Lambda Weekly. I'm David Taffet. I'm here in the studio with the late Patti Fink and Lerone Landis, and our guests today are Carrie Stone and John Culhane. They're the authors of Same-Sex Legal Kit for Dummies. Patti, I don't know if you noticed this, but when the book came in, it was addressed to you, and I figured, because it was for dummies, they automatically would have addressed it to you.
Thanks, David.
So thank you, Carrie and John, or your publicist, for knowing exactly where to send the book. You guys there? And are you there? John, Carrie?
I'm Carrie's here.
There you are. There you are. Now we can hear you. And the phones are doing funny things. One's red, one's blue. I've never seen that before. We have good new colors on it. It's so colorful.
That's called being locked in. That's how you put multiple colors.
Thanks, Clint.
Thank you, Clint, for helping us on this show. The first time, now we've done this show almost 30 years. First time we've had two callers on two different lines. We are so technologically advanced here. Carrie, John, welcome.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. Thanks.
It is
Happy
pretty.
to be here.
Happy New Year to you, too.
Thanks.
Your book is Same-Sex Legal Kit for Dummies, and it really is a step-by-step on what gay couples should be doing to protect themselves.
Exactly.
John, I know you do more the legal side of things, so what are some of the impediments that we have? I mean, the big one is DOMA. What are some of those?
The big one is DOMA. So I guess, the book is really written for people who can't marry for legal reasons, and we're obviously targeting the LGBT population here. And gay and lesbian couples who are in long-term committed relationships have all of the same issues, problems, and concerns as other couples, but they don't have the means to protect themselves. And one of the things about marriage that, often gets overlooked in these grand debates is that it provides a whole set of great default rules that couples rely on, sometimes without even knowing, right, consciously that these rules are there, but they kind of guide and shape the behavior. And so when you can't marry, and Carrie really wrote the part of the book that deals with the sort of, pieces that you need to put into place in order to be able to have your legal rights as protected as they can be, which we should say is not completely, even if you do all of that. The biggest impediments are the Defense of Marriage Act, right, which says that even if you are legally married in your state, that marriage has no clout, it means nothing at the federal level. That's what the Defense of Marriage Act does. And for people in Texas, of course, there's an additional impediment. Texas, like a majority of states, has a constitutional amendment that bans not only same-sex marriages, but also other things that kind of look like marriage. So I'm guessing that if the legislature wanted to pass a civil union or domestic partnership law, that would be in violation of the Texas Constitution, because it says that neither marriage between same-sex couples nor any other relationship that's identical or similar shall be recognized. So those are huge impediments for people living in Texas and a bunch of other states as well.
Okay, so what are some of the things that we should do to protect ourselves, Carrie? Let's take my situation as an example, because it is all about me, and of course my co-hosts do understand that.
Always.
So
Always.
let's just start with my situation. Very simple. I share a house with a friend. We do not have a relationship. We've had the house. It's more than 5 years now. We've done work on the house.
You don't invite your friends over very often.
We don't invite our friends over very often
Not
because we don't like them. But we do have a house.
A whole separate show.
Yes.
And maybe we should do a show on that. But what are some of the things that we should do to protect ourselves and protect the property? My closest relatives are cousins. His closest relatives actually are not in this country. He is a citizen of the United States. The rest of his family lives in Bolivia. So what are some of the things we should do to protect ourselves?
Well, when two people who are not married own a home together, they don't own it. They don't own the whole home. Each of them owns 50% interest. So if you own it with rights of survivorship, then when one of you passes, the other one will automatically own that deceased co-owner's share. But if you own it as tenants in common without rights of survivorship, which is probably the case, I would imagine in your case, then when one of you dies, if you don't have a will or a trust passing your 50% on to the co-owner or someone else, then the state of Texas will decide who gets it. And that will be determined by something called the law of intestate succession. And generally speaking, if you don't have any closer relatives, that would be your cousins. Mm-hmm. And in the case of your partner, it would be his relative, or not your partner, excuse me, the co-owner, it would be his relatives in whatever country he's from.
So in other words, it would be a mess.
What you do is I would, if I were you, make a will at least.
Yes.
That leaves your half of the house. If you wanted to leave it to the person who co-owns the house with you, then because he's not legally related to you, you're going to have to name him as a beneficiary in your will. If you have someone else you want to leave that 50% interest in the home to, and that person is not one of your cousins, then you'll need to name that person as your beneficiary in a will.
Okay. Let's just go quickly into a couple of the other things that I probably should have. Since my closest relatives live more than 1,000 miles from here, since his closest relatives live 3,000 or 4,000 miles from here, what about protecting each other? You know, if something were to happen to either of us, the other one would be the one to make those medical decisions as if we were partners. What paperwork should we have in place to make those medical decisions?
Well, what I recommend is that everyone have Texas advance directives or advance directives in whatever state you live in. Mm-hmm. Advance directives, generally speaking, are medical and financial powers of attorney that enable you to appoint someone to make your legal and medical decisions for you, and another document called a living will that allows someone to make decisions where it actually tells medical professionals and anyone else that you've determined ahead of time what medical treatment you want, if any, if you're at the end of your life or if there's no hope of recovery or you're in some sort of permanent vegetative state. So those are the three documents you should definitely have. And if you want someone to make medical decisions for you and financial decisions for you, considering you're sharing something as important as a home, the co-owner should be able to at least access whatever finances are necessary to to, continue to make payments and upkeep on the house. But you should know that those documents also die when you die. So in order to provide him with the ability to continue to have the right to make those kinds of decisions, especially regarding the house, you really ought to have a will as well.
Okay.
Or a living trust.
Okay,
That's
so
very comprehensive. Yeah, I guess if I could just jump in,
Sure.
there's one small thing to add, which is if one of you became seriously ill, let's say, tomorrow, God forbid, and these documents were not in place, there is a new series of federal regulations that basically says that if a person is hospitalized, that person can designate whomever they want as a person who can at least visit them. So that was a little Band-Aid put in place by the Obama administration in response to these horrible cases that we have heard about where partners of 20 or 30 years haven't been able to get in to see their same-sex spouses or partners. So that at least is a small thing that doesn't need to await the creation of all of these documents. But I agree with Carrie. You absolutely should create those documents as quickly as possible.
Right,
I would
because
like to
I was just going to say, because I'm the type of person who I want to be kept alive at every expense and cost the taxpayers of Texas the most money that I can possibly cost them.
Well, I do want you to know that it really doesn't take much to create advance directives. The law that John referred to deals with hospital visitation rights, not not necessarily medical decision making. So that again would fall automatically to a family member. And so therefore, if you don't have one close by, oftentimes they'll adjudicate it. A hospital will ask a judge to appoint someone. That someone probably won't be your roommate. So it takes just a few minutes. In fact, you can get them free. Let me just make this clear. You can get free advance directives for Texas or any other state on rainbowlaw.com simply by going there and clicking on the link that says Order Free Documents. And they will be for the state you live in. They will give you those protections that I just outlined, and you'll have them within an hour or so after you order them.
Great.
So do you have to have them notarized or anything? Because that's one issue that a lot of same-sex couples have as far as going to an attorney to get all this paperwork, because it does cost money.
Well, you don't have to pay to have them made, and you don't necessarily have to pay them to get them notarized. Oftentimes when we do business with, say, for example, a bank or a real estate agency or an insurance company, they'll have a notary on staff. And those notaries, if you do business with them regularly, they'll often do it as a service to their customers free of charge.
Right.
Great.
Okay, let's go on to Patti. Explain your situation.
My partner and I have been together 11 years, be 12 in April. And
Congratulations.
We're excited. And I've actually been doing the show longer than we've been together. But we own our home together. We have no children except our pets. And so what are some of the things that we need to look out for and documents we need to have prepared to ensure that as best we can under the law, we do have a superdoma here in the state.
Yes.
So nothing is recognized, but what are some of the things that we could do and documents we need to get?
Did you say you do own your home together?
Yes.
Okay, and you own it jointly with rights of survivorship?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I don't know if you are familiar with something called a living revocable trust or revocable living trust or grantor trust. Have you heard of such a thing?
I believe that's what my father had before he passed away.
Right. A trust is a legal document. It's a contract, really, and it avoids probate, which is it's the legal process by which a will becomes validated. So when you die with only a will, first of all, it doesn't take effect until you die, and you're not standing there able to defend whatever you've listed in your will, that you've given property to your partner or you've asked that your partner be the executor of your will. So the best way to avoid something like that is to create a trust. And a trust, as I said, is a contract. It's also a legal fiction in that like a corporation is a person, but not really.
Right.
When you sign a trust, the law sees you then as two separate individuals, and it sees your trust as something that holds property, like a container. So you would put your property, quote unquote, into that box, and you own it, whatever is in there, through the trust. When you sign the trust, you're the grantor, like the genie who grants 3 wishes.
Right.
And you also are the trustee, the person that the grantor trusts to take care of the stuff that you put in the box.
Right.
But you get to appoint your partner as your successor trustee, so that if you become incapacitated or after you die, she can come and step into your shoes and take over for you without any court or judge having to make any kind of a decision about it one way or the other. And because you've gone ahead and you've put the property you own into that trust, that's called funding the trust, and then you've literally taken it out of the realm of probatable property, so it will not pass through the probate process. There'll be none of those nightmare scenarios that we hear about. I don't know if you ever saw that movie, If These Walls Could Talk To.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And I remember that. Horrible.
Yeah. Well, that wouldn't happen. I know that woman didn't have a will, but even if she did have a will, it could have easily been overturned, because anybody who challenges a will, a judge has to take that challenger's word that there might be something wrong with it, and if the judge happens to be homophobic, or if the will was signed improperly, or you name it, or then there could be a possibility that the will would fail.
Well, fortunately, this is Texas, so we don't have homophobic judges here.
Right.
Oh, sorry, I forgot who I was talking to for a minute.
We don't have gay people here, according to one of our congressmen. He doesn't have any gay people in his district.
Just us 3.
Yeah.
Right.
Just us 3.
But, coming back to the trust, I know we have to take a break soon, but my father had one of those, and it's exactly what happened. We didn't have to go through probate court. It just passed on to the next trustee after his death that he designated in it. So
great. I know it's miraculous. I wish more people would do something like that.
Why aren't these more popular then? Or they should be.
They scare people. I think just that there's something most people don't really know about them, and they've been used for centuries by wealthy people to protect property. But I think they weren't really designed to help protect property between same-sex couples. But it turns out that it's quite handy for doing just that thing.
And let me just say, and just a quick plug for the book, that Carrie does a really good job of demystifying them. I think people hear the word trust and they have visions of complexity and maybe even worse, law school or something. But if you read the chapters, she really kind of lays out very clearly what's involved, and it's not that complicated to do, really.
We're talking to John Culhane and Carrie Stone. They're the authors of Same-Sex Legal Kit for Dummies. We need to take a break. I'm Dave Taffet. I'm here in the studio with the late Patti Fink and Lerone Landis, and we'll be back with more Lambda Weekly right after this.
You are listening to KNON 89.3 FM in Dallas and Fort Worth, the voice of the people.
Business owners, tell KNON's listeners about your business. You can put your business or event on KNON. KNON currently has space available to run announcements for you. Tell KNON's listeners about your goods, services, nightclub, concert, or event. Help keep the voice of the people on the air while putting your information on the air. KNON's been named the #1 radio station in Dallas by both the Dallas Observer and D Magazine. Put your business with Dallas's #1 station. Call now for more information at 214-828-9500, extension 227, or extension 233. For more information, go to KNON.org and click on the Run Spots on KNON page. It's a great way for your business to support community radio while letting more people know about you.
Howdy, y'all. This is Johnny Baker Jr. from Oak Cliff, Texas. The only type of Blue Monday I can stand is if Fats Domino is playing the piano. To fix this, start your week right. Listen to the Magic Time Warp Show with Ranger Rita, Action Annie, and Rockin' Robin. Soothe your Monday morning groove from 7 to 9 a.m. right here on KNON 89.3. We are the voice of the people.
Want to hear some great Texas blues? KNON has the CD for you. KNON's Texas Blues Radio Volume 5, our latest blues compilation CD to benefit community radio, sponsored by Forever Young Records. This CD features 15 tracks and 60 minutes of great original Dallas-Fort Worth blues from Tutu Jones, Blues Boy Bo, Buddy Whittington, Andrea Dawson, Kirkland James, Sonny Colley, Johnny Red and the Roosters, the Chris Watson Band, the Two Tones, the Rough Cut Blues Band, Jeff Stone and Charlie Love, Dave Millsap, Sirloin and the Ash Kicking Machine, Michael J. and the Paul Bird Band, and JJ and the Detonators. We're only selling 1,000 copies and it will never be reissued. Get your copy now at Forever Young Records in Grand Prairie, Record Town in Fort Worth, and in Dallas at Bill's Records and Rewind Music. The CD is available as an MP3 download at knon.org. All proceeds benefit community radio, KNON. For more info on Texas Blues Radio Volume 5, visit us at knon.org. Get your copy now and hear some real Texas blues. Your ears will thank you for it.
Hi, this is Candy Markham, and I listen to Lambda Weekly on 89.3 KNON FM. Listen.
And this is Lambda Weekly. I'm David Taffet here in the studio with the late Patti Fink and Lerone Landis, and we're talking to Carrie Stone and John Culhane. They're the authors of Same-Sex Legal Kit for Dummies.
And I just have a quick question for you guys, because I think this is so fascinating. There are a lot of books out there, quote, for dummies, and that's a whole franchise. How did you get your book in that, like, officialdom of for dummies?
We both have different stories to tell, but I have a website where we have a legal document preparation website for gay and lesbian couples at rainbowlaw.com, where we make wills and trusts and those free advance directives. And we are also activists for equal legal rights. My partner and I rode our bicycles across the country twice way back when it wasn't cool, including riding through Texas, by the way, to advocate for marriage equality. And so I guess on the basis of all of that, I was contacted by an editor at Wiley Publishing and asked if I wanted to participate in the writing of this book. And John has a different story.
Yeah, my story is quite different. So I have done nothing that interesting. I'm pretty much an academic. I'm at the Widener Law School in Wilmington, Delaware. But I also do and have done over the last couple of years some writing for other sort of more mainstream platforms for the LGBT community. There used to be a site called 365gay.com. Oh yeah. I was a regular columnist. I had a weekly column there. I also am a contributing writer for Slate. And because of that, somebody at Dummies had heard of me and made a casual inquiry to a relative of mine who actually works for Wiley, which is the company that has the Dummies imprint, and said, this John Culhane, doesn't he do all this other stuff besides legal academia? And because of that, they invited me to participate and to do more of the legal background, including marriage, domestic partnership, discrimination, immigration, those kinds of things. So we really had very different backgrounds and what we hope are strengths, although that's up to the reader to decide. But
I'm the one who had the book all week, and I've been going through it, and it's really very clearly written. It's a very easy guide to what are some of the things that you need to do.
Great.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
I'm glad it went directly to the dummy.
Even though it was addressed to the other one. Speaking of dummies, let's talk to our third dummy here. And Lerone, you tell your home situation.
I've been with my husband now for 15 years, going on 16. Oh my God. We were married in Vancouver, Canada, and we now have a 4-year-old child.
Wow.
So,
who they had through a surrogate.
That we had through a surrogate.
Okay.
So I guess
Are you both the legal parents of this child?
We are both legal parents.
Great.
Because she was born in another state.
She was born in Maryland, and they, both of our names are on the birth certificate.
Great.
Perfect.
And so, but I still wonder, I guess one of my specific questions, so you can answer my question in general, our situation in general, but I was wondering about if one of us would have to will the care of our child to the other, if that makes any sense. Like, if I were to pass, I need to will that my husband is the one that should take care of our daughter.
That's his polite way of saying if he were to croak.
Yeah.
No.
John, do you agree that I should
Is that necessary?
The answer, I think, is no. Carrie, do you agree with that? I mean,
yeah,
the answer is
you don't. But you should have a nomination of guardian in case something happens to both of you.
Exactly.
But because you're both legal parents, when something happens to one parent, the other parent automatically has legal rights. So
that's right. And there are no cases that either of us is aware of where a court has challenged that and said, well, since your marriage is not recognized in the state, which of course it isn't, right? That therefore somehow one of you is not the legal parent. You are the legal parent. That's one of the clearest examples of a state having to really apply what we call full faith and credit to the records of another state, and here that record is the birth certificate. So there's no reasonable prospect that, I can't imagine a situation in which any court would challenge the right of the surviving parent to raise that child.
He doesn't know our Attorney General.
Right.
And, I'm not even really concerned of the court, just in some strange, I don't know if I would call it strange, but just in some situation, like if one of my relatives were to challenge, it's like, no, we want to raise Gabrielle. That's my daughter's name.
That's right. That's right. I mean, I think it's important to nominate a guardian, and as Carrie said, and my partner and I did that. We had a sort of an interesting story ourselves, where we're foster parents for twin girls for 2 years before we were able to adopt them. Mm-hmm. And when we were going through the process, we were told, you should really identify people to serve as the guardians of your children if both of you were killed in a tragic boating accident or something, and so that's an interesting conversation to have, right? Because you first have to think, well, who would be the person or people we would like to have raise our child, if that ever needs to happen, and do they have the same values? Do they have the resources? Do they have the relationship with the child? And then, of course, you have to have the conversation. It doesn't do any good to nominate somebody without talking to them about it, right?
Right.
Having that conversation about, is this something you'd be willing to do? And when we did that, it was a difficult conversation to have, because we each identified one sibling who we thought was the obvious one, and then we had to decide between our two families, well, which would be the better, set of parents along a lot of different axes, and so it's complicated, but that's what you need to do.
But
we have had that conversation, and we've chosen somebody, and we've told them.
Good.
But guardianship passes to his co-hosts.
So you two will take care of Gabrielle.
We will.
You bet.
Okay.
You bet.
All right.
But I think that just shows, though, that parental rights are really far more persistent and valid, I think, than any type of marriage, and I think that's true for straight couples as well.
That's absolutely right. And one of the things that's interesting, I can recall having a conversation with Maggie Gallagher, whom I'm sure you know.
Oh, yeah.
And she has an odd set of positions, and she doesn't oppose. Well, I mean, I should say inconsistent, at least to me. So one of the things she says is that she thinks that same-sex couples should be able to adopt children, even though she would install a preference for opposite-sex couples. But she said, there are plenty of kids who need parents, and what she advises, though, is that even if you live in a state, she was advising gay couples this, even if you live in a state that recognizes your marriage, you should both make sure you are the legal parents. So if you have a situation where you have one kid from a previous marriage, both parents, if it's possible, should adopt that child. Because if you move to a different state and your marriage isn't recognized, then unless you are both clearly the legal parents of that child, that could cause complexities. Now, I don't know of any case in which that's happened, but I think she's right to be concerned about it. Mm-hmm. And she's an odd person to get this kind of advice from. But
I'm surprised she is concerned at all.
It's
too.
Interesting. She cares about the kids, and in her worldview, the way to care about kids is to keep gay people from marrying, which to me makes no sense. But she follows that through to say, once kids are in a relation or in a family, they should stay in that family, whether it's a gay one or a straight one. So I have to give her some credit for that.
But you know something, her position is very consistent with the way things actually happen in Texas. You said, John, that you were foster parents for 2 years. In Texas, that wouldn't happen. There are two parts to fostering. The first one takes place during the first 6 months of fostering, and that's that they're looking for an actual relative to take the child. If within 6 months they don't have that, then in the next 6 months, adoption procedures can begin. And
for same-sex or straight couples, or single people.
Or single people. And in Texas, they are actively looking for gay couples and gay singles to foster and to adopt. And it's a proactive looking for gay couples because they know we do such a good job at it. And we've had...
In spite of our legislature and our governor.
In spite of that, but we've even had Child Protective Services who's gone to the legislature and called off some of the worst and said without gay couples and gay singles, we're not going to be able to place all of our foster kids. And so back off because we need them. And they're doing a good job.
That's exactly right. And this, to me, is one of the most interesting things about the whole debate on sort of same-sex marriages and equality is that the attempts to install prohibitions against gay people or same-sex couples adopting children have really fallen flat in state after state after state, right? Unlike the marriage constitutional amendment. And the reason for that is exactly as you've said, which is these child advocates and these departments of human services really understand that there are lots of great gay singles and gay couples out there who are doing a fantastic job fostering and adopting children. And they have really been sort of allies of the LGBT community on this issue. So I think you've got this real inconsistency between the marriage laws and the laws relating to adoption and foster parenting. The only thing I wanted to add to that is the reason we were foster parents for 2 years is that the birth mother's legal rights had not been terminated. So it was nothing to do with, well, it was in a sense because we had a judge who didn't like the fact that it was a gay couple and sort of kept delaying terminating her rights. But that sort of explains the 2 years in our case.
And under Texas law, that wouldn't have happened. I mean, Texas is ferocious for the kid.
Yeah, that's pretty fast.
Yeah.
That doesn't leave parents a lot of time to get their act together.
Right.
That really is quick.
Right. Right. Texas feels like, get your act together, take care of your kid, or we're going to find somebody to take care of your kid for you. I mean, that's actually the official position, and I've heard that from people at Child Protective Services. Take care of your kid. We don't care about you. Yeah.
Hello?
Yes, we hear you, Carrie.
Okay, I wasn't sure because I was trying to say something and I was worried maybe I
No, go ahead. We gotcha.
I just wanted to interject something because all of you are coming from a place of living in a more urban community, and I'm dealing with people pretty much on at least a weekly basis who live in the most rural parts of the country, Tennessee, West Virginia, even in Texas, where they're not having the same kind of great outcomes that the two of you have had or are having. So I do believe there are some judges who would find that it is in the best interest of the child to place a child elsewhere, regardless of the legality of, both names being on the birth certificate. I'm not saying it would make its way through the court, but for example, there's a young man that I'm dealing with now who has a legal right to his child, but he lost that right because he was kind of browbeaten by his ex into believing he had no rights to custody, and he believed it for years. The child is now over 10 years old, and he's just now, making an effort to try to get back into that child's life. So even though his name is on the birth certificate and he was a legal parent to the child, which he had with a woman, by the way, he didn't believe he had rights to that child all these many long years.
Wow.
You carry that so
helpful. People can be intimidated, and I didn't want people to think that can't happen. It happens all the time. People take the child away to another state. It's hard for gay and lesbian couples because they're so accustomed, or gay and lesbian people, I should say, they're so accustomed to having no legal recourse. And oftentimes, local judges, little district court judges, or will dissuade someone, or just make a ruling that discourages someone from pursuing it to an appellate court.
Well, that's exactly right. And one of the things that Carrie that's a really illustrative story is that there can really be a gap between what the legal rules say and the reality of people's lives. And at the lowest level, sort of administrative and the local courts, all kinds of injustices go on. And, I think shows like this that people can listen to, and tune in all over the country are helpful in, and so is our fabulous book, in trying to let people know exactly what their rights are so that they can stand on those rights. The other thing I wanted to mention in 30 seconds or less is that, very often gay people are our own worst enemies. So the story Carrie just told about same-sex partner browbeating the partner into thinking he didn't have legal rights, these kinds of things happen with disturbing regularity where the biological parent, for example, tries to fence out the non-biological parent after the couple breaks up. And, while you can understand some animosity in terms of, what that does for, sort of LGBT rights, really is disturbing, and I think really should be condemned.
John, Carrie, we're about to go to break, but during the break, I wanted to go ahead and post a question. You guys could be thinking about it. I wondered if you all could elaborate on what is the difference between, because we've been told that even though our marriage is not recognized in the state of Texas, that doesn't mean that it's not legal. And if you could kind of explain what that means, we've been told that. And we'll be back from break.
We need to take a break. I'm Dave Taffet, and speaking of animosity, my co-hosts are the late Patti Fink and Lerone Landis. The book that we're talking about is Same-Sex Legal Kit for Dummies. Our guests are Carrie Stone and John G. Culhane. We'll be back with more right after this.
You're listening to KNON 89.3 FM in Dallas and Fort Worth, the voice of the people.
Hey, baby! Sonny Bryan's Catering presents
the 14th annual KNON Blues Festival on Saturday, January 26th and Sunday, January 27th to Poor David's Pub. Join us for the biggest blues event of the year, starring the Royal Rhythmaires, Bobby Patterson, Blues Boy Bo, the Aaron Burton Band, Andrew Junior Boy Jones featuring Carrie LaPie, Pete Barbeck and Seventh Son, Bonafide Blues, Deep Ellum Rhythm Kings, the Dallas Blues All-Stars featuring Hash Brown and Mike Morgan, the KNON Blues Review with J-Max, Sonny Boy Mark, and Jeff Stone, Big Charles Young, the Drew Lane Band with special guest Sir Loin, and the Super Kings. This is the big one. You never know who's going to show up and play as a special guest. Don't miss out on this big blues show. Advance tickets are only $15 and are available now at KNON.org, Bill's Records in Dallas, and Forever Young in Grand Prairie. This is a KNON Blues benefit event.
KNON thanks Sonny Bryan's Catering for their support.
If you are the low-income parent or guardian of children in need of childcare, there are programs available in the area that may be just right for you and your kids. Texas Workforce Commission offers solutions for families in need of assistance. Find them on the web at twc.state.tx.us. Click on Programs and Services in the blue bar at the bottom of the page to find out if you are eligible. 211 Texas, a program of the Texas Health and Human Services Commission, also offers child care provider referrals for families seeking subsidized child care. Contact them at 211texas.org or dial 211. If dialing 211 directly doesn't work on your telephone, you can call 877-541-7905.
Hello, I'm Christina from the interwebs, and I listen to Lambda Weekly on 89.3 KNON FM.
And this is Lambda Weekly. I'm David Taffet. I'm here in the studio with the late Patti Fink and Lerone Landis. We're talking to Carrie Stone and John G. Culhane. Their book is Same-Sex Legal Kit for Dummies. Lerone, you just asked a question.
Yeah, before the question, I wanted you all to think about, and if you could elaborate on what is the difference between having a marriage that's not recognized but yet is still legal, and how that question even came up, or how we were told that, is because I posed the question, what would happen if I were to marry a woman here in Texas, though I have been legally married in another place, Canada, and would that be considered bigamy?
That is one of the best questions. We actually discussed that, how there are like legal zones where if you were driving across country, for example, say you are married to your partner in Canada and then you marry a woman, you're driving through, maybe on a honeymoon tour of the United States, you'd be married, not married, a bigamist, not a bigamist. So yeah, the answer is you're in a real quandary if that's the situation, and it doesn't even have to be a woman, it could just be wanting to marry another person. I guess realistically, you're not married because your state doesn't recognize that marriage. But because the law is in flux, and it's possible that it will all change suddenly, all at once, possibly with the Supreme Court making some sort of sweeping determination, which is unlikely but possible, then you really ought to dissolve that marriage legally. And in the book, we've outlined some possible ways to do that. Obviously, you could go back to Canada, but you'd have to be a resident for a year, which would be pretty hard to do.
That is correct.
Or you could reside in a state that recognizes your marriage and live there for the required amount of time and then file for divorce. That's something you could do. Or you could even petition the state of Texas to grant you a divorce, even though they don't recognize your marriage.
No, that's happened. I wanted to bring that up because a family judge here in Dallas County, Tina Callahan, ruled a year or two ago that a same-sex couple who presented in her court for divorce, they'd been married in another state, she ruled that they could divorce, and Greg Abbott said no, our Attorney General. Because that would mean recognizing the marriage in order to grant the divorce, and so we can't even divorce here. You just
I did follow that case pretty closely at the time, and one of the things, and that was really what I was thinking in response to this question, because it seems like since Texas has taken the position that marriage is of no legal force, and the couple might have been able to get something called avoidance, which is basically like an annulment, but it really is another way of saying that the marriage really had no legal consequence. If that's the case, then it seems like logically one could not be convicted of bigamy, right? Because one marriage, the court has already said, counts for nothing. Now, the additional complexity there is that if couples are in long-term relationships without the benefit of marriage, whether it's a same-sex relationship or an opposite-sex relationship, courts in many states, and I'm assuming this is true in Texas because it's true in most states, will look at the equities of the situation and still divide property in ways that accommodate the parties' reasonable expectations. So even though there might not be a possibility of convicting anybody for bigamy, you might find yourself in a situation where there were obligations that a court would recognize both to this person that you were in a relationship that should be called marriage but isn't, right, and to your legal spouse at the same time. So there are a lot of complexities, and it's not even clear that repealing or declaring unconstitutional the Defense of Marriage Act solves that, because that just solves this on a federal level. And the issues you're discussing really are very basic state law questions about marriage and divorce.
Mm-hmm. I also wanted to add that every trial court, even in Texas, has the power to grant equitable relief, which is just a judgment that's based on what's fair and necessary for a given case. And you can ask a judge to, at least for equitable relief. And even if it fails, it might be worth a try. And you just have to argue that there is, no other suitable remedy. You don't have anything else available to you. And if you would suffer real harm unless you could get the divorce, and that there's no defenses that should prohibit a court from granting the divorce. And even if they won't grant the divorce, perhaps they'll just give you some sort of a division of property relief, something where they at least put something in writing so that you can show later on that you did in fact give it,
Well, our piece of crap Attorney General, his solution was that it goes to a business court, and the point of it was, there were several points. First of all, to deny that it was actually a marriage, and second of all, just to degrade gay and lesbian people, that, this is just a business contract and you're not real people and don't deserve relationships. Patty had a different question about, this is going off on something completely different, about Kansas.
Yeah, I mean, it's hot in the news today. It's all over the front page news, all over the web, about this gentleman in Kansas who answered a Craigslist ad, donated sperm to a lesbian couple. They, one of them, became pregnant, had the child, and now they've split, and she sought benefits from the state. And in the course of that, they basically badgered her to cough up his name, and now the state is going after him for child support for this, in order, I guess, to offset benefits for this woman who's now single with a child. And and he's saying no, that we had a private agreement, and it was, I gave away my rights and such. And they said no, it's invalid because they didn't do it through a doctor, and therefore they could have been lovers, I guess, is what they're thinking.
I know all about this case because I actually blogged about it for a site that I write for sometimes called FamilyScholars.org, and it elicited a lot of comments. So basically, what you have here is the state saying, whatever contract the parties entered into, right, can't bind a third party. And we as the state are a third party. And we are looking for resources wherever we can find them. And the state shouldn't have to pay for the expensive medical care. One of the children had, or the child had, extensive and expensive medical needs. And that's why the state was trying to recover the money. And you're right. If this had been an anonymous sperm donation and an artificial insemination performed by a licensed physician, the law in Kansas is very clear that the party donating the sperm has no legal obligation, right? But where those procedures aren't followed, then all bets are off. And so this poor guy, I mean, what happened was, he originally agreed to do this for money. When he met the couple, he decided to do it for free just because he wanted to, and he thought he was being altruistic, right? And he was,
and protected by their contract.
And protected by the contract, but the contract has no effect on the third party. My concern with the case is, I mean, apart from the fact that it just looks unfair to this poor guy, is that there are many people that, oppose anonymous sperm donation. They say people have a right to know who their parents are. I think this kind of thing for those people is really bad, because what it's going to do is to stop people like this guy from revealing who they are, and you'll have more and more people, going to anonymous sperm donation and not choosing to be involved in the life of the child at all, for fear that the state will exploit some kind of a loophole. So it really is a problem. And I think, unfortunately for him, the Kansas law it looks pretty clear to piggyback on something Carrie said, he's going to need to make some kind of equitable argument that he reasonably thought that he would have no further obligation. But in Kansas, there are a lot of bad decisions there for LGBT couples. The other thing to say is that had this been an opposite-sex couple, right, and they had needed a sperm donation, this wouldn't apply, because if they were legally married, the law presumes that the child is the child of the husband and wife. But where the couple's not married, that presumption doesn't apply, and the state can identify another person as the legal parent. So
they wouldn't even interfere in a straight couple's situation at all.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
They would not have. They feel that they can because there are no protections for same-sex couples.
No, not
Can I interject something?
Sure.
I wanted to make sure we let everyone know before time runs out that there are, in fact, sample forms in this book.
Yes.
And we have a website where all of this legal stuff will be kept updated. And I wanted to give you that URL, if that's okay.
Sure.
It's dummies.com/go/same-sex legal kit. So even if we're talking about something and soon the Supreme Court issues a decision that changes everything we've just said, you can always go to that website and keep up to date on what's happening.
The book also comes with a CD, and tell us what's on the CD.
For the most part, the CD contains sample forms, but it also has links to organizations. John, what did you contribute to the form?
Oh, my contribution to the CD is these two appendices. Appendix B, which is all about U.S. laws that apply to same-sex couples. So I talk about relationship recognition, and then also what the laws are on adoption and surrogacy. So, state by state. So people can go to the appendix and check that out. Always with the caveat, of course, that these laws are constantly changing, and it's a place to get started if you want to know what the state has done. And I think most people will find that even within a particular state, there can be uncertainty and complexity as states are trying to work some of this stuff out. And then the other thing is a very short Appendix C, which is on relationship recognition in other countries.
And some of the forms that are on here, for example, they correlate with each chapter. So the chapter on living together, has a co-tenant agreement and a living together agreement and so forth. And there's also medical advance directives of the sort that we talked about at the beginning of the show, and domestic partnership statutes, a sample living together agreement, all sorts of things, sample wills and trusts.
And so those forms that you were talking about earlier that you could get, and you were saying that you could get at no cost, is that also on the CD, or do you have to go to a different website for that?
If you go, this is my website, it's rainbowlaw.com.
Rainbowlaw.com, okay.
When you go to the homepage, you'll see a link that says order free documents, and you'll get advance directives. That's a living will. It includes that hospital visitation form that we discussed as well. Living will and medical and financial powers of attorney for your state.
We only have another minute or two to go, and I wanted to just get in one thing. We didn't finish. Lerone, you and I were talking before the show a little bit. His daughter will be starting school in the fall, and he lives out in one of the right-wing suburbs, and I'm not sure how his kid is going to be treated in school, and I want to make sure that she gets the best treatment. I know, Lerone, you and Danny do too. What are some of the things, and I know you go into this in the book a little bit, what are some of the practical things that you should do? Because it's not always a matter of legal. Sometimes it's a matter of do the practical stuff first.
And that was sort of interesting for me to write because I have second-grade twins.
Oh, wow.
And they're in the local, they're in the local public school. And so as I'm writing the book, these things are occurring to me about atmosphere in schools. I think the first thing to do is to sort of get an assessment of the environment of the school, and then I would talk to the principal, particularly if there's a concern that the school might be, not as welcoming as it could be. A lot of times, kids will face, sometimes full-scale bullying, but sometimes on a lesser level. This can also come not only from other students, but from teachers, right?
Right.
Who can say things that range from thoughtless/insensitive to downright vicious. So, I think the first thing to do is to introduce yourself. Maybe if it's in the case of a couple, walk in together, set up an appointment to talk to the principal at the beginning of the school year, and introduce yourselves and say our child will be here, and sort of in a more positive way, just to get we wanted you to get to know us a little bit. That can be tremendously helpful all by itself. And then if there are problems, start documenting things immediately, and be insistent that your child be treated in a fair way. And if situation in a particular classroom isn't working, insist that the child be transferred to another class. Usually there's more than one class per grade. Those are some of the practical things that can be done. And also make sure Texas and 48 other states have laws now against bullying.
And we have a good one.
Yeah, good, right. So find out what those are, and come with that suit of armor to whatever more serious problem you're encountering. Although, in a case like this, informality and conversation really are the preferred modes, if that works.
John Culhane, Carrie Stone, the book is Same-Sex Legal Kit for Dummies. Thank you so much. I apologize for Lerone even suggesting that he would marry somebody of the opposite sex. I'm not sure how that would even work, but thank you so much.
And we'll put those links up on our Facebook page.
It will be there.
All right, great.
Great.
Thanks so much for coming on with us, and we'll be back next week with more Lambda Weekly.
Thanks, guys. Great show.
KNON 89.3 FM in Dallas and Fort Worth, the voice of the people.
Business owners, tell KNON's listeners about your business. You can put your business or event on KNON. KNON currently has space available to run announcements for you. Tell KNON's listeners about your goods, services, nightclub, concert, or event. Help keep the voice of the people on the air while putting your information on the air. KNON's been named the #1 radio station in Dallas by both the Dallas Observer and D Magazine. Put your business with Dallas's #1 station. Call now for more information at 214-828-9500, extension 227, or extension 233. For more information, go to KNON.org and click on the Run Spots on KNON page. It's a great way for your business to support community radio while letting more people know about you.